Welcome everybody. We're back with another video. It's your boy Q. We're going to be continuing our series on deploying the Kali virtual sock in a box solution. Uh, Kali Purple, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and do a quick recap on the previous videos we had. The first video I actually did, I think I've done three. First one was kind of introducing this project. Second was talking about the differences between how offensive security, the folks behind the original Kali Purple deployment, uh, the difference between how they're deploying it and how I'm actually doing it. And my third video, the most recent one I did before this one, is we built our. I'm gonna pull up one of the diagram from from the offensive security. If you remember this diagram here, we built this firewall back in the previous video. This is OpenSense. We configured all the rules that are usually that were basically called for. So this guy is up and running. This is what's going to provide us internet access. If we go to in this diagram here, this is one I put together. This device here is what we built. These are what we're going to be working on next. In this video, what I'm going to do is actually do a couple of things. For one, let's matter of fact, since we're here, let's go to my diagrams here or my instructions. So if I go here to building the nodes, all three of those nodes, which I happen to have here, let me pull this up again. All three of these nodes, they're all going to be running Kali Purple. So this is the main. These are going to have host all the main services you will be accessing for when it comes to using this enclave. Um, in that regard, and they're all VMs that I'm going to be hosting in VSphere. What we're going to do in this video is actually build each one of these in VSphere, all three of them, and then we're going to install Kali Purple on all three. And then we'll have separate videos for configuring each individual node, starting with detect. But let's get started first with the building these in vSphere. I'm going to go over two different ways to do this using VMware. One is going to be directly in um, VMware, like the vSphere interface, and then the rest of them will be done in VCenter for those who actually are using vCenter. Um, but if I break out and take a look here at the protect node, well, this one we've already done, so we're not going to go ahead and do that. We'll start with the detect node here. Um, the main thing to pay attention to this is written for vSphere. However, this screenshot here, anybody regardless of which hypervisor you're using, this is what you want to pay attention to. Whatever the steps are that you must follow for your hypervisor to build a virtual machine, these are the things to take note of. For this node, 4 cores, 20 gigs of memory, 2 terabyte drive, although on my environment I'm going to use a 1 terabyte drive just because my disk is not, my data store is not that large. And then your LAN interface. Remember in previous videos we talked about that the firewall is its internal interface. You'll need to have a path to communicate with it. I called mine SOC management. So this is the interface this is the LAN interface for me. And then you'll insert your ISO for Kali Purple. There's also going to be one other thing we'll do with the video card. This is a VMware thing. Adding more video memory just so that you can have full HD resolution on your virtual machine. If I expand these other two, they have similar. They'll say follow the same steps. However, the details of the specifications are different. So memory on this identify node is 8 gigs, and the hard drive is only 128 gigs. Everything else is exactly the same. And the respond node will have 2 more cores, so it's 6 cores, 16 gigs of memory, and a 512 gig hard drive. So that's that. So the first one again, we're gonna build this guy in using this interface, the vSphere interface. So I have that up here. I'm going to go ahead here and right click, create a new VM, new virtual machine, hit next. We'll call this, since this is the identify node, identify. Your OS is going to be Linux, your guest OS version. Pick the latest version of Debian that you can support, and I would suggest using the 64-bit variant. Choose your data store that you want it on. And now here, we're going to go ahead and I believe that was 4 cores for this guy. This one would have, let's take a look, 20 gigs of memory. I'm going to make it a little more simple. I'm going to just make it actually 20 gigabytes instead of the number of megs. And the hard disk size, I believe this one I said I was going to make it 1 terabyte. Because if I'm not mistaken, this called for a 2 terabyte drive. Yes, so we'll make that 1. I'm going to use, and in this case, since the this is the network that I want to set it up as this is the LAN network that I want to connect it to. Because the way I set mine up, mine is a distributed virtual port group. It won't allow me, and it's got ephemeral ports and that kind of thing. The configuration it has won't allow me to actually assign it through VSphere, the VSphere interface. I have to do that in VCenter. So what I'm going to do is just pick one of my standard port groups. So I have one called VM staging. I'll just use that for now. Host device. For a DVD drive, we're going to go and pick our Kali Linux purple installer ISO. And this is the vSphere specific thing here. I'll change the total video memory to 16 megs. This would allow me to have that full HD interface. So we have 4 CPUs, 20 gigs of memory, 1 terabyte drive, and then I picked a standard port group. Eventually you want this on your LAN, and then your Kali. We're going to hit next, and we'll hit finish. And let's see here. I'll come back to this guy. There it is. I was wondering where it went. Okay, I'm not going to turn this on just yet. Those were the steps inside of the vSphere interface. The rest of these I'm going to do in the VCenter because it's going to help me out a little bit. So I'm over on my VCenter. First off, in VCenter, you build any, by default, if you haven't made any changes in the back end, if you build any VMs directly in the vSphere interface for a host that is managed by vCenter, it will detect, when it detects that host, that VM, it'll put it under a folder called Discover Virtual Machine. So I'm going to just go ahead and drag that guy right where I want it, which is in this Kali Purple folder. I'm going to go ahead and edit its settings. This is where I can actually, since I'm in this interface, I can connect to the port group that I actually want. So for SOC management is my LAN interface. Pay no attention to SOC LAN. That was something I was playing with earlier. And now everything else seems to be good. We're going to hit OK. And now as we see here, it's under SOC management. Now, ooh, there is something I do want to change. I should have done this when I was creating that hard drive there. And I'll go back here and actually configure that. It doesn't really matter which interface. But there is something I noted about the hard drive. What I'm going to do, our hard drive is here, the 1 terabyte. We're going to go ahead and delete, well, we don't need to delete it, do we? Yes, we do. We'll go ahead and delete this, delete it from the data store, yes. That's why it took so long to build. The reason why, we're going to go back in here, hit edit, and this is something to keep in mind when it goes going forward. When you create your hard disk, new standard one, we'll make this 1 terabyte, but this is the part I forgot to tell you. Make it thin provisioned. Let you just blessed with terabytes and terabytes of space in your data store, I would recommend using this for a lab environment at least. So now that we have that set up, it's not started yet. We're going to go back to VCenter, and here's why I like using VCenter. I have the ability to clone it. We're going to clone this guy and create our detect node. We're going to make sure it's in the same location. Probably purple. On the same host. It will detect which host is on. It will detect what data store the disk is on. Make sure this part really doesn't matter as long as the VM itself is configured for thin provision, but I do it anyway just as a double check. And here's where we'll do customize this virtual machine's hardware. We'll go ahead and hit next, and now we can make the changes that we want. So I'm cloning it, but there's a few things I want to change. One, I just realized this is the detect node. So really I don't need to change this one at all because I just realized the specs that I gave it is for the detect node. So we're going to leave this as is. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and hit next and finished. And just for kicks, just because I went on ahead and did that, we're going to go back to this identify and edit again. This time we're going to edit it in vCenter. Again, it doesn't matter. Identify does have 4 CPUs. It does have a different, it only has, I believe, 8 gigs of memory. Here's identify. Yes, 8 gigs of memory and a 128 gig drive. So as far as the drive is concerned, I do have to delete the drive itself. I'll go ahead and hit remove device and data. So we'll delete that. And we'll go ahead and hit OK just for naming purposes. Because if you try and delete an older drive and then replace it with another drive, in the same step, you can do that, but then your drive that is created is now like an 001 or something like that. It adds on to unnecessary tags onto the end of that file name if you're really getting into file management. So I go ahead and do it clean. I just delete it, make sure there's nothing there, and then now I add my drive. So we're going to add a hard disk. This is a 128 gig hard disk, and yes, it will be thin provisioned. Okay, so now so far we have detect at 4 CPUs, 20 gigs of memory, a 1 terabyte thin provision disk. Identify 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of memory, 128 gig of drive space. And now we can go ahead and clone either one of these. Clone virtual machine. This is respond. Same location, same server, same data store, customize. We'll do a couple things at once. We will delete this guy. We're going to give this 6 CPUs. And I believe the respond node has 512 gig drive and 16 gig of 16 gig of RAM. And we'll go ahead and hit next and finish, just so I can go ahead and add that drive and it not necessarily be tagged. So here's the hard drive, 512, and then provisioned. Okay, and now we'll see that displayed here. Cool. So all of these guys have their memory allocated, CPUs allocated, drive allocated. They're connected to the SOC management. Matter of fact, if I click on that link on that network, I can see those 3 drives right here, plus or 3 VMs right here, plus a couple others. Don't worry about these, but the Byzantium is the firewall. It is there. Let's go back to this guy. and they all have the Kali Purple disk in their drive. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and fire these bad boys up, all three of them. First one we're going to start with when we get in there is detect. So I'll power these guys on. And the first one we will go to, again, is detect. So they'll all start at the same point, but I'll go ahead and hit graphical install. I might as well pull these guys up. Identify and respond. So this is pretty much going to be self-explanatory, but let's go ahead and go to the documentation. Go to our table of contents, so we can skip to the Kali Purple install. So here's the installation. This is pretty much going to be the same steps for all of these VMs. So we've already powered all the VMs on. Basically going to select English as our language, or if you speak another language, you want everything in a different language, feel free to pick whichever. Our region, select your region. My region is the United States. American English. For network settings, I have on here configure network manually because we will be configuring these manually. And where we're going to get that information from, even though I show you an example here, a couple of places you can actually find that. Well, really for you guys, it'll probably be one. But if I go to this document here, I have these already laid out. These are the IP addresses that I'll actually use. And I do want to check to make sure that my LAN interface of my firewall is that 192.168.220 in VSphere. That's as simple as picking this guy and taking a look at what our, yep. Let's see what we have. I'm using 30 for my LAN. Matter of fact, if I actually pull this guy up, we can see the SOC management is 192.168.30. So that's what I will actually use for my network. The fourth octet will be exactly the same, but all these will be 192.168.30. Whatever your network scheme that you decide to deploy in your LAN, follow that. That's my recommendation. So back to the instructions here. So we have our networking setup, gateway 30.1, which I actually do have that here. So my diagram is not up to date, but these instructions show me that these are what I'm going to be using, the 192.168.30. So gateway, you're going to have your name server, use the exact same thing as the firewall itself. The host name itself, this was for the detect node, which is actually going to be called Kali. I won't be using Kali Purple, I'll just call it detect. And its domain, I will work with Kali.purple. Actually, I will double check that too, because I might be using FTSS. I want to see what I set my firewall for. The rest of these will be the same here. CDX admin, that's what I'm using. That's what I'm for my root account. Not root, but my admin account. Setting up a password, configure time settings, and there are some disk settings that they have here that I put in here. And I have two sections here. For the SOC nodes, which is what these are, the identify, detect, and respond, this is what we will use. If we are using the analyst workstations, there's other steps. So we're going to expand this. We're doing manual partitioning. And we will select our disk. And we're going to set, let's see, what do we have here? We're double clicking the hard disk. We are creating a new partition. Double click the free space, and we're going to give it a 24 gig swap. Make it logical, put it at the end of your um, available space. And this is your journaling, ext4 journaling. Or that's what it's going to show by default. What you want to do is select swap area. So that'd be down here. And then we'll select done. We'll go ahead and do that again, but this time the rest of the drive, we're going to go ahead and create a partition. You'll just max it out, basically using all the other free space. It's a primary partition, and we will make sure that that guy is, by default, ext4. That's what you want to leave it as. And we'll finish and write the changes to disks. So we're going through that. We're going to leave this at the disk portion here before we get to software selection. Let's get these guys going. And we'll actually do all of them at the same time. Or not same time, but one after another. Starting with detect. Here's our English. We're going to hit continue. United States. We'll get continue. American English. Continue. While that's loading components, I will move to the identify and respond nodes, doing the exact same thing. We're going to get these going kind of simultaneously so that we're not waiting too long for anything. But if there will be parts where I would just pause the video. Let's get back to this detect. So this is detect, right? So we're going to call this one detect. And I am going to check yes. So right about here, or near the bottom of this screen, you see it's byzantium.cdx.ftss. So that will be the domain I will actually configure. So we're going to be using the 192.168.30 as my LAN subnet. We are going to be using cdx.ftss as my domain. So host name, detect, and the domain is going to be cdx.ftss. Again, these are names that you can use whatever you want. Just be consistent with it. And I want to double check something here. Come back. All right. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to restart these virtual machines, but I'm going to also make one change in the background because it skipped the network configuration. In skipping the network configuration, the reason why it skipped it is because it picked up a IP address from the firewall, and I didn't want it to do that. So what I'm going to do is pause the video here and kind of bring us back to, I'm going to back up here. Actually, I can do that right here. Configure network. Let's see what we get. Continue, continue. No, we're going to pause the video and I'm going to go back. I'm going to actually, here's what I can do. I don't even need to pause the video. Byzantium, edit settings. We'll go ahead and just disconnect the internal network adapter, the LAN and network adapter for now. And now we will go back and tell it to configure the network. The fact that it's getting an IP address from the firewall, that's why it keeps skipping this. I want to actually configure it manually. So your best bet to be able to configure it manually is to make sure it's not connected to a DHCP source. You see this is taking a little longer now because there is no DHCP. So now we should be able to enter an IP address. Yes. Continue. Configure manually. All right, this is our detect. So when we're looking at our detect node, it's going to be .5. Remember 192.168.30 for me, .5. So 192.16, I'm not typing anything. 192.168.30.5. Still not. Insert. There we go. That's 24. And it is 30.1, 30.1. While it's doing that configure network, we'll go to identify, same thing. Identify. Nope. CDX FTSS. Go back. Let's do that network again. Go back. There we go. So respond is .3. And this one, I believe, is identified, so it should be .7. All right, where's detect at? Detect is the name. CDX.FTSS. This is your display name for your admin user. This is the actual user account name. Password. Same thing is going to go for identify once it gets there, and respond. This one. Yep. Identify, CDX FTSS. I'm in mountain time. This is where it's going to start doing the disks. All right, so here's where we're going. Manual. We'll double click this guy. Want to select yes. So we can create a new partition table. Double click our free space, creating a new partition. Again, we're going to do 24 gigs. It's a logical, and we'll put it at the end. One thing about putting it at the end, the last thing we're going to do is change this guy to swap. Reason why I'm saying put it at the end, this allows for since you're putting your main OS partition at the beginning, when it starts labeling it, like in Kali it'll be SD and X would represent your disk number. The very first one be a zero, one likely 0 or 1, or if it's A, it'll be your very first, that'll be your OS drive. Yeah, matter of fact, the partition, excuse me. So done setting up this partition. And now we go to free space. Same thing. This one will just go max. Continue. It's a primary. And we'll leave this as is. Done setting up partition. And we'll do finished. And let's double check, make sure we did all that right. Our password, this is our time. Okay. So we went manual. Selecting the disk. You want to write the new partition table. Double click the free space. New partition. 24 gig. That can be really whatever you want, but I would recommend something like that with the sizes we picked on the drives. Logical. Put it at the end. Change this from ext4 to swap area. And you're done with that one. Double click the free space. New partition. Max. It is a primary. We leave this as is. You go ahead and hit that done setting up partition and finish setting up my disks. And we'll select yes. Continue. While that's doing that, we're going to go to identify, do the exact same thing. And the last one, which is respond. All right, let's see where we're at here. So now it's installing the base operating system. I'm going to pause the video here, and by the time we get back, we're going to be at the point where we're selecting software packages. And we're back now. So as you can see on the screen, we're now at the software selection portion. And this is going to be really simple. Now, as the intuitive thing, if you're looking at, okay, one's a detect node, one's identify, and one's respond, you'd want to have those specific tools. No. According to offensive security and according to my instructions as well, it's going to be real simple. If we take a look at this, all of them are going to look exactly the same. And all they're going to have, this is the SOC analyst workstation, so let's not look at this guy. This is for the SOC nodes, as you can see here. The SOC nodes, all we need are those top two boxes checked. We don't need anything else, and that doesn't matter which node it is. The identify, the detect, and the respond, all of them are exactly the same. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and clear the rest of these. On this guy, same here, and same here. Because everything we're going to be having on here, we're literally going to be installing those things as we configure each node. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And as you can see, it's going to be pulling this stuff down. And one of the things I will also do, I'm going to go ahead and get these guys started. I'm going to reconnect that firewall interface for the internet, just so I don't forget later on. Since now they are configured with their static IP addresses. So right now, as it's doing the install, we'll pause the video again. And the next time when we return, we shall be setting up the Grub bootloader, which is pretty much close to the end of this installing Kali. So I'll be back. Okay, now we're back here. We have the the Grub bootloader screen. We are going to go ahead and hit yes on this. Before I even do that, let's look at our instructions. So we will select yes. We're going to make sure we select that disk device. There should only be one option there, which is dev SDA. And right here, I have a note here that when you get to the finish installation screen, that's where we'll go into VSphere and go ahead and just or VCenter, either one, just remove the ISO from the drive so that it doesn't try and boot up and try to attempt to reinstall. Not that it will automatically do that, but that's just a fail-safe, if you will. So let's go ahead and do this. We'll do this on all three nodes: detect, identify, and respond. We'll hit yes. Double click the drive. I'm going to do one right quick just to make sure that we're doing good. Actually, I'll go ahead and get these guys kicked off as well. Yes. SDA. Just running the last few steps. I'll come back when they're all on the... Oh, they're already on the finished installation disk. We'll wait for this final screen, which is this guy. Once that screen pops up on all of them, matter of fact, I'll just pull over here. I will come back. And we're back. As you can see, we're on the finished installation portion here, and it's on all three nodes. So what we're going to do is go back to VSphere or VCenter, whichever method you use. Or if you're using another hypervisor, just go back to that hypervisor. Go to your actual VMs. And what you're going to do is whatever method it is usually used for it is to remove that ISO. For vSphere and vCenter, you're going to edit the properties of the VM. And as a matter of fact, as we can see here, it's already kicked it out, so to speak. So it's no longer connected. That's fine. We could literally move on from there. What I'll do to verify that as well is I'll change this to client device if I'm using vCenter. If you're using vSphere, it'll be host device. Either way, that just says, hey, whatever's in the physical drive of the host, that's what I want to use, and I don't have a physical disk drive, so it'll be empty. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. I did that on detect. Let me show you in vSphere what it looks like here with identify. Edit settings. We'll go ahead and hit host device. Save. And since I'm here, we'll go ahead and do respond. The main thing, you don't want it to say data store ISO with a connect with an indication that it's connected. So now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and continue to reboot each one of these three. And while these are rebooting, let's take a look at our documentation. We have configuration. So we've done the installation. Let me scroll up here to collapse this. Now we do configuration. There's a few things we're going to actually do. We're going to do a couple of installations, or maybe one or two, and we're going to do some updates. This is where the firewall should be providing internet access to your VMs. Once again, it's not necessarily called out in the OffSec instructions, but let's get to one of these here. So, and also let me see if I can go full screen on this guy. Yep, and get my full HD. This is why I like that 16 megs of video memory. I can do that. So this is my detect node. You can actually see it up here in the corner. Password is this. So you're going to log in with your administrator account that you created. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Kali Purple. Quick little navigation. All we have right here, we do see our identify tool there, just one, but you know, other than that, we don't really need anything else on here as far as, you know, Kali related tools. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up a terminal. I want to verify some things. This part's completely optional, but just because I have a preference of it. Appearance, I like my green on black. Okay, so we're going to verify IP adder or IP address. I just want to verify my IP information is set up properly. It is. See if I can hit internet. Yep, we're getting there. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to open up Firefox here. This is a little cheater way for me. As long as I got internet access, I can pull up my instructions on the VMs itself. So let's see. I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to look up Kali Purple Sock in a Box. And what I'm going to do, let's pull up the offensive security page. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in a sec. So under their documentation, it's on GitLab. If I go to plan and I go to issues, I made a post on here. It says VSphere version. And this link right here takes me to my instructions. So now that I have this, I can do cutting and pasting right into here. So where we're at Kali Purple. And I'm going to do these same steps on the other two VMs as well. We're going to configuration. Now, XRDP, first thing we're going to install, which is basically going to, now we can literally copy this guy, come into here, paste it. Put our password in. So XRDP is first thing we're installing. There is an XRDP error that was called out in the Kali Purple instructions from OffSec. I didn't alter this at all. I don't believe I altered this. No, it's the exact same command. So we'll copy this guy. Since this guy's already done, paste that in. As you can see, it pulled it down, saving to, and it's saved. So that lets you know it was successful. And now we're going to update Kali Purple, starting with updating grub. And the very next thing we're going to do is update so we can fetch our latest package listings for Kali Purple. And let's do a full upgrade. You see I have the -y at the end of my command, or while that's going to be a while. I automatically just say yes, so I don't have to. I go auto approve or auto confirm. That's the term. And there will be a set when it asks me about. One of the updates may ask you about configuring character set. Just hit enter to select the defaults. That should already be selected. But that's it for so far for this guy. This is the detect node that's running. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy on the front so we see it rolling. We're going to do the same steps for here, but these two I'm going to do them slightly differently. Let's go ahead and get that. This is what identify. This is the way I would normally do it for this method. Most of it's the same, but I add one step in here to make it a little better. I'm not going to do the check on the web. They should all be the same. You should check them individually, but I'm going to check by actually going to Google. And there's my connectivity. Lock in a box. Again, we're not going to pick this first one. We're going to look until we see the Kali Linux purple distribution on GitLab. Again, I'm going to find mine. And here's the extra step I'm going to do. There is a shortcut up here for text editor. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And let's get my terminal going. So the difference for now is, let's go to our Kali Purple, is me opening that text editor. Because all I'm going to do now is take all of my commands that I need and copy them into my text editor. So I can just paste it all at once. because there's so few commands that we're actually running, this works well, especially since there's not too many of them that are asking for anything. But when you get into other things future down the line when we're doing configuring Elastic and things like that, there were some times where I could not combine everything. So I went on ahead and like just individually did those. Okay, so this is our full command list. And we will go here and paste those in. It ask me for a password. Let's try it again. There we go. Installing XRDP. And then it should update grub after that. Update our package listing. And then finally it should start the full upgrade. There's the grub. Now it's grabbing our update lists. And now we're installing. And now let's get that going with the respond node. All right. We'll come back when we get to the point to where we're, as a reminder, let's see here. Pull this guy up more. Yep, once we get to, well, again, once we get to this screen here, if it comes up about asking about the character set, just hit enter to accept, or make sure that it's got, your appropriate character set. Typically, it's going to be something like Latin 1 and Latin 5. Um, and just go ahead and hit enter for that. And keep this terminal open once that update has been completed, or not just this one, but the upgrade of Kali, because we're going to have some more commands here to do. Basically, we'll be enabling SSH and XRDP. We'll do some NTP synchronization, and then we'll reboot the system. But I shall return once these updates are complete. Okay, we're back, and it appears that all of our nodes have been completed their upgrade tasks. So let's see here. Now we're up to Kali Purple 2024.1. We installed 2023.4, so we're fully up on that. The last few steps we have on this now is, let's scroll down to that portion there. See. Already gone through all of these. We're going to enable XRDP and SSH. Actually, I'm on this, so I'm not going to do a copy there. So let's go ahead and get this guy going. And so I'm not going to worry about doing a copy into Notepad or anything on this, because it's just a couple of things that we're doing here. We'll go ahead and enable those. And then we have our setting up NTP synchronization. So now we can't read the time sync. Let's take a look here. All right, so time syncing. It's going to be a little different with Kali 2024.1. So for the moment, what we're going to do is we'll just take the time date CTL portion of it. Matter of fact, let's take a look and see if that actually took. So that one took. We have a system D. Let's see what we have in our system D, because it may have moved. There it is. So what we're going to do is go back to our line here, and we'll change this. That was Etsy system D system. And it wasn't even system actually, it's just Etsy system D and time sync conf. Oh, it's time sync D conf. There we go. And then we'll just reboot Kali Purple. While that's rebooting, I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the identify node, taking into account the modification of that one command. That was as of 2023.4. So we obviously have to change our path for that command for the time synchronization. I will make the modifications coming up in my next iteration, my updates for the instructions. So far, everything else seems to be smooth. So we want to, okay, got that one going. Time sync. And basically, we're just going to put a D on the end of all of these, or both of these here. Sudo reboot. And we'll do, this will be the last one, and it should pretty much be the last things we're doing in this video. Enable this. And I just realized that there's something I missed in this. Yeah, so I need to put some explanation here. Yeah, so it's not just a copy and paste. When you take a look here, right here, we're supposed to put our IP address or the fully qualified domain name of the protect node. So, like this example shows, byzantium.kali.purple. In our case, we're going to do byzantium.cdx.ftss. So, I'm going to do that on this node before I reboot it. And the other two, I'll log in and I'll make sure that that has been changed properly. So, do this. There. That's what it's supposed to look like. And actually, while I have that, let's do a sudo vi, let's see, system d time sync d.conf. And let's get that line out of there. Or actually, I don't need to get it out. I'm just going to replace it. There we go. Yep. Now we can reboot this guy. Let's get on these others. And the only thing I'm doing on here is adjusting the time sync. That would be byzantium.cdx.ftss. Q. And also what I'm going to do here is just to verify, yes, it is pointing at my firewall. So now we'll do a sudo reboot on this guy, and it should do a time sync there. And for those who are not familiar with VI as much, but I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. So when I get down to the line that I want, what I do is get to the point where I want to want to delete it. I hit I so I can go ahead and get into insert mode. I delete everything I want to remove here. Add my line. Hit escape. And then colon. So shift and the colon so you get it. That gets you down in your commands at the bottom. Write and quit. So WQ. And now we can sudo reboot. And that's pretty much it for installing. If we take a look here, installing and configuring your not configuring, but installing the operating system and configuring Kali Purple. So our next video is going to, what we're going to do is get back on that detect node, and we're going to start configuring it to where it's going to have all of the services that it's going to require. It's going to have the Elastic Stack fully configured, your fleet server, and other things. So hopefully get a chance to come back and join me with my next video. If you're liking this content, please feel free to like and subscribe the video, subscribe to the channel, leave comments, and I hope to see you in the next video.